A little girl gave her last $5 to a broke stranger at the grocery store. He was actually a legendary biker leader who'd been hiding for 15 years. When dangerous men came after her family, 500 bikers showed up, and they weren't leaving until she was safe. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like dying wasps. Nora James shifted her weight from one worn sneaker to the other, watching dust particles dance in the afternoon sunlight streaming through Miller's grocery store windows. The air conditioning had been broken for 3 days straight, and the heat made everything smell like overripe bananas and desperation. Next, the cashier called, her voice flat as roadkill. The old man in front of them shuffled forward. Nora noticed his hands first, scarred, weathered, trembling as he placed 3 items on the conveyor belt. A can of soup, a loaf of white bread, a small jar of instant coffee, the kind of shopping that told a story nobody wanted to read. He wore a faded denim jacket despite the heat, and his gray beard needed trimming. But it was his eyes that caught Nora's attention. They were the color of a summer storm, sharp and aware, like they'd seen things that would make most people look away. "That'll be $847, the cashier said, examining her pink acrylic nails. The old man pulled out a worn leather wallet and produced a debit card. His fingers shook as he inserted it into the reader. The machine beeped. Declined. "Try again," the cashier sighed, already annoyed. He did. Same beep. Same red letters on the screen. "Look, I don't have all day," the cashier said, loud enough that the 3 people behind them shifted uncomfortably. "You got cash or not?" The old man's jaw tightened. There should be money in there. My check was supposed to." "Yeah, well, it's not there now." The cashier reached for the items. "I'm gonna have to ask you to step aside." Nora watched something collapse behind the old man's eyes. Not anger. Something worse. Shame. The kind that makes a person shrink into themselves like paper held too close to flame. Her mother, Megan, touched her shoulder. "Honey, we need to." But Nora was already moving. Her hand dove into her pocket and emerged with a crumpled $5 bill. It was her money. The money she'd been saving for the class picnic next week. The money she'd earned by helping Mr. Patterson clean out his garage in 100-degree heat. "Wait," Nora said, stepping forward. She was small for 10, all elbows and knees and wild brown hair that refused to stay in ponytails. But her voice didn't shake. "I have money." The cashier looked at her like she'd just spoken Martian. "Kid, that's not enough." "Then I have more at home." Nora placed the 5 on the counter, then looked up at her mother with eyes that could melt titanium. "Mom, please. Can we cover the rest?" Megan James had exactly $23 to her name until Friday. The diner was bleeding money. The rent was 2 weeks late. But when she looked at her daughter, this fierce, impossible child who seemed to carry light in her chest where other people kept doubt, she couldn't say no. "I've got $4, Megan said quietly, fishing through her purse. The old man turned, and for the first time, Nora saw his face properly. It was a road map of hard years and harder choices, but his eyes were suddenly bright. "Wet?" "No," he said. "You can't. I can't let a child." "Please," Nora said simply. "Let me help." The word please did something to him. His whole body went rigid, like he'd been struck by lightning. He stared at this little girl with her stubborn chin and her $5 bill, and something ancient cracked open inside his chest. The cashier took the money and bagged the items with theatrical irritation. The old man accepted the bag like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice rough as gravel. "Nora James." He nodded slowly, filing it away. "Red Dalton," he paused. You remind me of someone I once rode with. Someone who believed good people still existed." "Good people always circle back," Nora said. She didn't know why she said it. The words just felt right, like they'd been waiting in her mouth for this exact moment. Red's eyes widened. His hand, still trembling, reached toward her, then stopped. "I'm gonna pay you back," he said. "I swear it. I don't know how yet, but I will." Nora smiled. "It's okay. Sometimes people just need help." As Red walked toward the door, he stopped, turned. "The someone you remind me of? Her name was Sarah. She died believing I was better than I am." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Maybe she was right. Maybe it's not too late to prove it. Then he was gone, disappearing into the harsh Arizona sunlight like a ghost remembering how to become solid again. The cashier muttered something about wasting everyone's time, but Nora didn't hear it. She was watching through the window as Red Dalton walked down the dusty road, his silhouette getting smaller and smaller, the plastic bag swinging from his hand. "That was a kind thing you did," Megan said, pulling her daughter close. "He looked so sad, Mom, like he'd lost something important and forgot where he put it." Megan kissed the top of her head. "Come on, baby. We need to get home before the dinner rush." As they walked to their old pickup truck, neither of them noticed the faded motorcycle parked 3 blocks down, or the way Red Dalton stood beside it for a long moment, staring at Nora's retreating figure, his hands no longer shaking. He pulled something from his jacket pocket, a photograph, edges worn soft from 1,000 touches. In it, a younger Red stood surrounded by men in leather vests, their arms crossed, their faces hard. But in the center stood a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "Sarah." Red's thumb traced her face. "Good people always circle back," he whispered. "That's what you used to say." He looked toward the horizon where the sun was starting its descent, painting the desert in shades of blood and gold. For the first time in 15 years, Red Dalton thought about going home. Not to his trailer, but to the place he'd abandoned when honor became too heavy to carry and guilt too sharp to hold. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of creosote and distant rain. Somewhere in the canyons north of Flagstaff, a steel whistle hung silent on a hook, waiting. The Brotherhood didn't know it yet, but the signal was coming. And it would start with a little girl's $5 bill. The trailer sat at the end of a dirt road that had forgotten what maintenance looked like. Red's boots crunched on broken glass and scattered gravel as he approached the rusted metal box he called home. It leaned slightly to the left, like a drunk trying to remember which way was up. He'd been walking for 2 hours. The motorcycle had refused to start this morning, again. Just like everything else in his life, it was giving up on him piece by piece. Inside, the trailer was worse. A hot plate with 2 settings, barely warm and fire hazard. A mattress on the floor. 3 plates, 2 forks, 1 life that had somehow shrunk to fit inside 40 square feet of failure. Red set the grocery bag on the counter and stared at it. $9.47 worth of food that a child had bought him. A child who didn't know his name an hour ago. A child who'd looked at him and seen someone worth saving. His throat burned with something that wasn't thirst. He pulled out the whiskey bottle from under the sink. Jack Daniels, bottom shelf, his most consistent friend. But his hand stopped halfway to his mouth. Instead, he set it down and walked to the closet. The box was buried under 3 years of newspapers and shame. Red pulled it out, his back protesting. The dust was thick enough to plant crops in. Inside, wrapped in an old t-shirt, was the photograph he'd been carrying earlier. But beneath it were others. Dozens of them. The history of something beautiful that he'd destroyed. Red spread them across the floor like tarot cards spelling out his damnation. There. 1998. The Desert Ghosts at their peak. 47 members. All standing in front of the canyon they'd claimed as their own. Every man was someone's son, someone's brother, someone's second chance at being part of something real. They weren't a gang. That word was too small, too dirty. They were a brotherhood. They'd started as veterans, men who came back from wars overseas only to find they didn't fit anywhere else. Men who understood that sometimes the only family you get is the one you choose. Red's finger traced the faces. Tommy Wrench Martinez, who could fix anything with an engine and duct tape. Big Jim Thornton, 6'5" of gentle giant, who cried at every wedding. Marcus Doc Webb, an actual doctor who rode on weekends and never charged ghost members for medical care. And Sarah, always Sarah, standing beside Red, her hand on his shoulder. Not his old lady, she'd hated that term. His equal, his conscience. The woman who'd convinced him that strength wasn't about intimidation but protection. "We ride for those who can't ride for themselves," she'd said once, after they'd escorted a domestic abuse survivor 3 states away from her ex-husband. "That's what makes us different. That's what makes us matter." Red's hands clenched into fists. 15 years ago, they'd organized the Desert Rally, a 3-day event that brought motorcycle clubs from 6 states together. It was supposed to be a celebration. A peace summit, proof that the clubs could coexist without territory wars and bloodshed. But Clint Dugan had other plans. Dugan was young then, hungry, with eyes that looked at the Brotherhood and saw profit margins instead of family. He'd started pushing for the ghosts to expand their business opportunities, code for drug running, protection rackets, the kind of poison that turned clubs into criminal enterprises. Red had refused. Sarah had refused. The old guard had refused. So Dugan made a deal with the Scorpions, a rival club from Nevada. During the rally's final night, while everyone was celebrating, Dugan's crew sabotaged 2 motorcycles belonging to ghosts who'd opposed him loudest. The brakes failed on a canyon turn. Sarah and Tommy never made it to the bottom. Red found out later, too late, that Dugan had orchestrated it. But the damage was done. The ghosts split. Some followed Dugan, believing strength meant ruthlessness. Others scattered to the wind, too broken to rebuild. A few tried to stay loyal to Red, but he was drowning in guilt. He'd been their leader, their anchor, and he'd failed to see the snake in their nest until it had already struck. So Red walked away, changed his name unofficially, moved to this forgotten corner of Arizona, and tried to drink himself into non-existence. The club fractured. Dugan took the name and twisted it into something dark. The Desert Ghosts became known for extortion, for loan sharking, for making people disappear. Everything Sarah had died standing against. And Red became a ghost himself, haunting the edges of a life he no longer recognized. He picked up another photograph. The last good day. Sarah smiling at the camera, holding up a sign. Good people always circle back. It had been their motto, their belief, the thing that separated them from the darkness. Red's breath caught. Those exact words. From a 10-year-old girl he'd never met before today. The universe didn't work like that. Coincidence wasn't that cruel or that kind. He stood, his knees popping, and walked outside. The sun had set, leaving the sky bruised purple and orange. In the distance, he could see the lights of Flagstaff twinkling like scattered stars. Somewhere in that town was a little girl who'd given her last $5 to a stranger. A girl who'd looked at him and seen something worth saving. Sarah would have liked her. The thought came unbidden, but true. Sarah would have loved Nora's fierce little face, her stubborn kindness, her refusal to walk past suffering. Good people always circle back, Red whispered to the desert wind. Maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to finish what should have been finished 15 years ago. Maybe it was time to come home. Behind him, inside the trailer, his phone, ancient, cracked, barely functional, started to ring. Red stared at it like it was a snake. Nobody had this number. Nobody called him. Ever. He answered. Yeah. The voice on the other end made his blood freeze. Hello, Red. Heard you're still breathing. Pity. We need to talk about a grocery store. Click. Red stood motionless. Phone pressed to his ear even after the line went dead. Dugan knew. Somehow, Dugan already knew. The game had just changed, and Nora James, without knowing it, had just painted a target on her back. The James family diner smelled like coffee, bacon grease, and broken dreams. It occupied a corner lot on Route 89, the kind of place where truckers stopped for breakfast and locals gathered to gossip over pie that Megan's grandmother had made famous 30 years ago. That was before the new highway bypass, before her husband David's heart attack 18 months ago, before the world decided that small family businesses were quaint relics of a simpler time. Megan flipped the open sign at 5 a.m., same as always. The sun hadn't cracked the horizon yet, but habit was stronger than hope these days. Nora sat in the corner booth, working on her homework by the light of a flickering neon sign. She'd learned to do her schoolwork here, mornings before class, afternoons after. Her mother couldn't afford babysitters, and Nora had never complained. Not once. Mom, what's collateral mean? Nora asked, looking up from a vocabulary worksheet. Megan's hands froze while wiping down the counter. Why are you asking that? It's in my spelling list. Something pledged as security for repayment of a loan. Nora read the definition slowly. That sounds complicated. It means something valuable you give someone to prove you'll pay them back, Megan said carefully. Finish your homework, baby. Bus comes in 40 minutes. The morning passed in the usual crawl. 3 customers. $18 in receipts. The coffee maker made a grinding noise that suggested imminent death. The walk-in freezer was running on prayers and duct tape. By noon, Megan had counted the register 3 times, hoping the numbers would change. They didn't. She had $340 in the bank. Rent was $800, due 5 days ago. The electric bill sat on the counter like a coiled snake. $267, final notice in red letters. And then there was Dugan. She heard his truck before she saw it. A black Dodge Ram with chrome accents that probably cost more than she'd make all year. It pulled up outside, blocking 2 parking spaces like it owned them. Clint Dugan stepped out wearing a smile that would make a shark jealous. Mid-40s, gym fit, with slick back hair and a leather jacket that probably cost more than her car. 2 men emerged from the truck behind him, thick-necked, dead-eyed, the kind of men who got paid to make problems disappear. Megan's stomach turned to ice. The bell above the door chimed as they entered. Dugan's smile widened when he saw her. Megan James, looking beautiful as always. We're closed for lunch, she lied. No, you're not. Dugan slid into a booth, his men flanking the door. We need to have a conversation about our arrangement. I told you. 2 more weeks. I'm waiting on. You're waiting on money that isn't coming. Dugan's smile never wavered, but his eyes went cold. You borrowed $15,000 6 months ago. With interest, you now owe me $22,000. When exactly did you plan on paying? I'm selling the house, Megan said, hating how her voice shook. The realtor said. The realtor is lying to make you feel better. Dugan leaned back. This diner's failing. Your house is worth maybe 80 grand in this market, and you still owe 60 on the mortgage. You're drowning, sweetheart. And I'm offering you a life preserver. I don't want your help. Sure you do. Here's my offer. Sign over 51% of the diner to me. I'll clear your debt, invest in renovations, bring in my people. We turn this place into something profitable. Megan's jaw tightened. My grandfather built this diner. My father ran it for 30 years. It's not for sale. Everything's for sale. You just haven't hit rock bottom yet. Dugan stood, walked to the counter, ran his finger along it like he was inspecting for dust. Or, there's another option. You're a beautiful woman, Megan. Alone. Stressed. I could make your problems go away. All of them. You just need to be friendlier. The implication hung in the air like poison gas. Megan's hands clenched into fists. Get out. Excuse me. I said get out. Her voice rose, fierce and sharp. I don't care what I owe you. I'll sell everything, sleep in my car, work 3 jobs. But I will never owe you that. Now leave my diner. Dugan's smile finally cracked. Something dark flickered across his face. You have 72 hours to come up with 5 grand. Just the interest. Or I start taking collateral. He glanced around the diner. Nice place. Be a shame if something happened to it. They left. The bell chimed cheerfully, mockingly. Megan stood frozen for a full minute. Then her legs gave out, and she sank to the floor behind the counter, shaking. That night, Nora woke to the sound of breaking glass. She crept to her bedroom door and peered out. The living room was dark except for the blue glow of the TV her mother had left on. But she could hear it, her mother's voice, muffled, breaking, crying. Nora tiptoed down the hallway and found her mother on the kitchen floor, surrounded by papers, bills, notices, all stamped in red. Mom. Megan looked up, quickly wiping her eyes. Baby, I'm sorry. Did I wake you? What's wrong? Nothing. Just grown-up stuff. Go back to bed. But Nora saw the papers. Saw the red ink. Saw her mother's face, the kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix. She sat down beside her mother and put her small hand on her shoulder. Is it about money? Megan's laugh was wet and broken. Yeah, honey. It's always about money. The man who came today, he's the one you owe. You saw that. I heard it. Through the kitchen door, Nora's face was serious, older than her years. He's a bad man, Mom. I could tell. Yeah, Megan pulled her daughter close. Yeah, he is. I'll fix this, Nora said suddenly, fiercely. I'll find help. I'll find someone who can stop him. Oh, baby, it's not your job to. Good people always circle back, Nora interrupted. That's what I told Mr. Dalton today. And I think maybe he's good people. Even if he doesn't remember how yet. Megan held her daughter tight, breathing in her shampoo, her innocence, her impossible hope. She didn't know that across town, Clint Dugan was making a phone call. She didn't know that 3 of his men were already loading baseball bats into a trunk. She didn't know that good people might circle back, but bad people always struck first. The diner windows wouldn't survive the night. Red woke to the sound of his own heartbeat and the taste of regret. The photograph of Sarah lay beside him on the mattress, her paper smile watching him crawl back into consciousness. Dugan's phone call had kept him up most of the night. The threat was clear even if the words weren't. Stay away, old man, or remember what happened to the last people who got in my way. But morning brought clarity that darkness had obscured. Red stood, stretched his aching back, and made a decision. He was going to repay the girl. Not just the money, though he'd scrounged together $9 from change jars and coat pockets. He was going to warn her family. Whatever Dugan was planning, innocent people didn't deserve to be caught in crossfire. The motorcycle started on the third try, coughing black smoke like a coal miner with emphysema. Red coaxed it onto the road and headed toward Miller's grocery store. The morning air was cool, carrying the smell of creosote and distant rain. For the first time in years, Red felt something close to purpose. It sat in his chest like a small, glowing coal, not enough to warm him completely, but enough to remind him what heat felt like. He pulled into the grocery store parking lot and killed the engine. Yellow police tape crisscrossed the front entrance. Red's blood went cold. He dismounted and walked closer, his boots crunching on broken glass scattered across the pavement. The front windows were shattered. The door hung at an odd angle, lock mechanism torn completely out of the frame. They came at 2 a.m. Red spun. The cashier from yesterday stood behind him, smoking a cigarette with shaking hands. Without her customer service mask, she looked younger. Scared. What happened? What always happens when you cross Dugan? She took a long drag. 4 guys, baseball bats, 15 minutes. Owners in the hospital. Broken arm, 3 cracked ribs. They said it was a robbery, but nothing was stolen. Just destroyed. Red's jaw tightened. The girl. Nora James. Is she? She's fine. She wasn't here. The cashier studied him with new interest. You know the family? The girl helped me yesterday. Yeah, I remember. Gave you her lunch money, or whatever, the cashier flicked ash. Sweet kid. Shame about her situation. What situation? You don't know? The cashier laughed, bitter and sharp. Her mom owns James' Family Diner on Route 89. Borrowed money from Dugan 6 months back when her husband died. Now she can't pay. Dugan's squeezing her like a lemon, waiting for juice. The world tilted slightly. Red grabbed the wall to steady himself. Dugan, he said slowly. Clint Dugan. Yeah, you know him. Red's mind flashed back 15 years. A younger Clint, leather vest with the Desert Ghosts patch, standing at the edge of the canyon after Sarah and Tommy's funeral. The club's dead, Red. You killed it with your weakness. Time for new leadership. I know him, Red said quietly. I used to ride with him. The cashier's eyes widened. You were a ghost? I was their president. Before Dugan turned them into something ugly. Holy shit. The cashier dropped her cigarette and crushed it under her heel. Then you know what he's capable of. That diner? It's next. Everyone knows it. Dugan doesn't make threats. He makes examples. The James family is marked. Red's hands clenched into fists. The small coal in his chest wasn't small anymore. It was spreading, catching fire, burning away 15 years of rust and self-pity. Where is he now? Dugan. He owns the Cactus Rose Bar downtown. That's his headquarters. But listen, old-timer. The cashier stepped closer, her voice dropping. Dugan's not the guy you remember. He's got 20 men on his payroll. Cops on his payroll too. Half the town's scared of him, the other half works for him. Whatever you're thinking, don't. Red turned and walked back to his motorcycle. Hey, the cashier called. Did you hear what I said? I heard. Red threw his leg over the seat. The engine growled to life. But 15 years ago, I ran from a fight that needed fighting. A woman died because I was too broken to see the wolf in sheep's clothing. I've been dead inside ever since, just too stubborn to lie down. So what? You're gonna ride in there and get yourself killed? For some kid you don't even know. Red looked at her, and the cashier took a step back. His eyes weren't an old man's anymore. They were sharp, clear, dangerous. That kid reminded me that good people exist. That honor isn't dead, just sleeping. He revved the engine. And Dugan made one mistake. He threatened the first person in 15 years who made me want to be better than I am. You can't fight them alone. I'm not alone. Red pulled something from his jacket pocket, a steel whistle on a worn leather cord. I just forgot where I put my family. He kicked the motorcycle into gear. As he pulled away, the cashier shouted after him, "What are you going to do?" Red didn't answer, but his destination was clear. Not the bar. Not Dugan. Not yet. He was heading north, into the canyon where the Brotherhood had been born, where the truck stop bar still stood, the place where ghosts used to gather before rides, before everything fell apart. The place where the whistle had only been blown for emergencies. For war. His hands didn't shake anymore as he gripped the handlebars. The desert highway stretched before him like a second chance written in asphalt and redemption. Behind him, the cashier watched until the motorcycle disappeared into the heat shimmer. She pulled out her phone, hesitated, then made a call. "Yeah, it's me. You know that old ghost that Dugan was asking about? Red Dalton? He's on the move. And boss, I think he's done running." 40 miles away, in a windowless office above the Cactus Rose Bar, Clint Dugan listened to the report and smiled. "Good," he said softly. "Let him come. Let him blow his little whistle and cry for brothers who don't exist anymore. I want him to remember what I built from his ashes before I bury him next to his precious Sarah." He hung up and poured himself a whiskey. The old king was coming back to reclaim his throne. But Dugan had already melted it down and forged a crown. This was going to be fun. The broken spoke truck stop sat at the mouth of Black Canyon, like a tombstone marking where hope went to die. Once, it had been sacred ground, the place where the desert ghosts gathered before every major ride, where prospects earned their patches, where brothers became family. Now it was just another dive bar with watered-down beer and dreams as stale as the peanuts on the counter. Red parked his motorcycle next to a semi-truck with Wyoming plates. The sun was setting, painting the canyon walls in shades of copper and blood. His hands trembled as he dismounted, but not from age this time. From fear. The whistle hung heavy around his neck. He dug it out from the bottom of his trailer's closet, beneath the photographs and the guilt. It was steel, hand-forged, with the ghost insignia stamped on one side, a motorcycle with wings. Sarah had given it to him the day he became president. "Only blow this for Brotherhood," she'd said. "Only when it matters." Red pushed through the bar's door. The hinges screamed in protest. Inside, 12 people scattered across the gloom like survivors of a shipwreck. A bartender who looked like he'd given up on life around the same time as Red. 3 truckers playing pool. A couple in the corner trying to save a marriage that was already dead. 2 men at the bar who looked up when Red entered. One of them choked on his beer. "Jesus Christ," the man whispered. Red's eyes adjusted to the darkness. The face was older, weathered, but unmistakable. Big Jim Thornton stood slowly. 6'5" of mountain, beard now more gray than black, but the same gentle eyes that had cried at every wedding. "We thought you were dead, brother." "I was. For 15 years, Red walked forward. "Who's with you?" The second man turned. Scarred face, missing 2 fingers on his left hand, eyes sharp as broken glass. Wrench Martinez, Tommy's best friend. The man who'd blamed Red for not seeing Dugan's betrayal. "Give me one reason I shouldn't break your jaw," Wrench said quietly. "I don't have one." Red stopped 3 feet away. "I failed you. Failed Tommy. Failed Sarah. Failed everyone who trusted me to see the snake before it struck. Damn right you did. But I'm here now. And Dugan's about to hurt an innocent family. A little girl who showed more courage in a grocery store than I've shown in 15 years, Red's voice hardened. "I'm done running. I'm calling the Brotherhood home. And I need to know, are there any brothers left to answer?" Wrench stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he extended his mutilated hand. "Tommy would have answered. So I will." Red shook it, feeling something break open in his chest. Big Jim grinned, tears already forming. "Hell, boss. You should have called sooner." Red reached for the whistle. His hands shook as he raised it to his lips. The steel was cold, familiar, unforgiving. This was it. The moment that would either prove the Brotherhood was truly dead, or that some things were stronger than betrayal and time. He blew. The sound cut through the bar like a blade through silk. High, piercing, unmistakable. The call of the desert ghosts. Every member knew it. Every member had sworn to answer it. The bartender looked up. "Was that?" "Yeah," Big Jim said softly. "That was the call." Wrench pulled out his phone. "I'll start the chain." Within minutes, phones across 3 states began to ring. In Tucson, Marcus Doc Webb was closing his free clinic when his phone buzzed. He stared at the text message for a full minute. Then he walked to his garage, pulled the tarp off a Harley he hadn't ridden in a decade, and started packing medical supplies. In Albuquerque, a mechanic named Jake Chains Cordero was under a Chevy when he heard the ringtone he'd never deleted. He rolled out, read the message, and looked at his teenage son. "Remember those stories I told you about the ghosts? About the good old days? They're calling us back." In Las Vegas, a truck driver named Eddie Price was loading his rig when the call came. He made one phone call to his dispatcher, "Family emergency. I'm out for a week," then started driving south. The word spread like wildfire through dry timber. "Red's back. The real ghosts are riding again. The Brotherhood needs you." Some ignored it. Some had moved on, built lives that didn't include leather and loyalty. But more answered than anyone expected. By midnight, 15 motorcycles had arrived at the Broken Spoke. By 2 a.m., 37. By dawn, the parking lot looked like a reunion of ghosts made solid. Men in their 50s and 60s, faces weathered by time and regret. But when they saw Red standing in the parking lot as the sun rose, something ancient woke in their eyes. "I don't deserve this," Red said to the assembled riders. "I don't deserve your forgiveness or your faith." "You're right," Wrench said. "But that kid does. And if Sarah were here, she'd already be on her bike." "Sarah," Big Jim echoed. Others took up the name like a prayer. Red felt tears on his face and didn't wipe them away. "Dugan's turned our name into poison. He's using our patch to terrorize innocent people. Tomorrow night, he's going after a family, a woman and her daughter. The same little girl who reminded me what honor sounds like." "So we ride?" someone called from the back. "We ride," Red confirmed. "But not like Dugan. We don't bring violence. We bring presence. We bring witness. We show that family, in this town, what the real desert ghosts always stood for." Doc stepped forward. "I've got 20 more brothers driving in from Phoenix. They'll be here by noon. 30 coming from El Paso," Chains added. "Vegas is sending 42, Eddie said. "They're riding through the night." Red's throat closed. The Brotherhood hadn't died. It had just been sleeping, waiting for someone to remember why it mattered. By sunset, the canyon was alive with the thunder of engines. Motorcycles stretched along the highway like a steel river. Men embraced, cried, remembered who they used to be. The desert ghosts were rising from the ashes. And Clint Dugan, in his office above the cactus rose, received the first reports with disbelief that slowly curdled into fear. "How many?" he asked. "Last count, 483. Still coming." Dugan's hand tightened around his phone. "That's impossible. The ghosts are dead. I killed them." "Boss, Red's brought them back. Every real ghost is answering the call." For the first time in 15 years, Clint Dugan felt something he'd forgotten, doubt. The old king wasn't just returning. He was bringing an army. Megan locked the diner's front door at 6 p.m., 2 hours early. The afternoon had brought exactly 4 customers and a sense of impending doom that sat in her stomach like swallowed stones. "Why are we closing early?" Nora asked, stacking chairs on tables. "Just tired, baby. Long day." It was a lie. The truth was Dugan's 72 hours were up. The truth was Megan had $340 in the bank and no miracle coming. The truth was she'd seen his black truck drive past twice today, slow and predatory, circling like a shark that smelled blood. She'd sent her mother desperate texts, called old friends, even walked into the bank to beg for a loan extension. The loan officer had looked at her with pity and said no before she finished explaining. There was nowhere left to run. "Mom, you're shaking." Megan looked down. Her hands were trembling against the counter. "I'm fine. Go grab your backpack. We're going to Aunt Linda's tonight. But we never go on weeknights. And you hate." The rumble of trucks cut her off. 2 vehicles pulled into the parking lot. Dugan's black Dodge Ram. Behind it, a white pickup with 3 men in the bed, their faces hard and expectant. Megan's blood turned to ice water. "Nora, Listen to me. Go to the kitchen. Lock the door. Call 911. Do not come out no matter what you hear. Mom. Now. Nora ran. Megan heard the kitchen door slam, the lock click. Her daughter's footsteps retreating to the back office. The diner's front door rattled. Then harder. Fists pounding. Megan. Dugan's voice, friendly but with an edge like a blade wrapped in silk. Open up. Let's talk like civilized people. She didn't move. The window beside the door exploded inward. Glass sprayed across the floor like lethal confetti. A man reached through, unlocked it from inside. Dugan entered first, brushing glass off his leather jacket. 5 men followed, thick-necked, armed with baseball bats and crowbars. The kind of men who hurt people for money and slept just fine afterward. You really should answer when someone knocks, Dugan said, smiling. It's just polite. I don't have your money. I know. That's why I'm here to collect collateral. He gestured around the diner. Nice place. Real vintage charm. Be ashamed if. He picked up a salt shaker and dropped it. It shattered. Accidents happened. Please, give me 1 more week. I swear I'll. You'll what? Pull 5 grand out of thin air. Dugan walked closer. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign over this building to me. Tonight. Or my friends here are going to redecorate. Starting with the kitchen, where I'm guessing your daughter is hiding. Megan's vision went red. You touch her and I'll. You'll what? Dugan was in her face now. Call the cops. Sheriff Harris owes me 20 grand in gambling debts. He sees what I want him to see. One of the men raised his bat, aimed at the jukebox. Then they heard it. A sound like distant thunder. Growing closer. Louder. The building began to vibrate. Dugan frowned. What the? The thunder became a roar. Became a wall of sound that made the windows rattle and the floor shake. Motorcycle engines. Not 1 or 2. Hundreds. Dugan's face went pale. He ran to the broken window. The parking lot was filling with motorcycles. They poured in like a flood, forming a semicircle around the diner. Row after row of bikes, engines growling in perfect unison. Riders in leather vests, arms crossed, faces hard as the desert stone. The Desert Ghost's patch gleamed on every vest. The real patch. The original. The one that meant brotherhood, not brutality. No, Dugan whispered. This isn't possible. The motorcycles kept coming. They lined the road, filled the adjacent lot, blocked every exit. The sound was apocalyptic, a mechanical heartbeat that promised reckoning. Then, silence. 500 engines cut at once. In the sudden quiet, one motorcycle rolled forward. An old Harley that had seen better decades. The rider dismounted slowly, pulling off his helmet. Red Dalton walked toward the diner, flanked by Big Jim and Wrench. Behind them, the wall of ghosts stood motionless, waiting. Dugan stumbled backward. You're supposed to be dead. Red stepped through the broken door, glass crunching under his boots. His eyes swept the room. Dugan's men with their weapons, the terrified woman behind the counter, the destruction already begun. Guess kindness brought me back, Red said quietly. This is MY territory. Dugan's voice cracked. My club. You abandoned us. I abandoned a brotherhood. You built a criminal empire on its corpse. Red took another step. Big difference. Dugan's hand moved toward his jacket. For ghosts moved faster, blocking him. I wouldn't, Wrench said softly. Doc pushed through, carrying a laptop. We've been busy, Dugan. Remember Eddie Price? Drove trucks for your logistics operation for 2 years. Kept detailed records. Routes. Drop-offs. Money laundering through that bar of yours. He opened the laptop, turned it so Dugan could see the screen. Spreadsheets. Photos. Audio recordings. Dugan's face went from pale to gray. You can't. That's not. Also got testimony from 6 business owners you've been extorting, Big Jim added. Funny thing about victims. When they see 500 bikers riding for justice instead of profit, they get real talkative. Red pulled out his phone. Sheriff Harris is 20 minutes out. So is the state police. And Channel 7 News. They're very interested in the story about how one motorcycle club terrorized an entire town. We already sent them the files, Doc said, along with the FBI field office in Phoenix. Dugan's men were backing toward the door. One dropped his bat. Another's hands were shaking. You think you've won? Dugan's laugh was jagged, desperate. You're all going down with me. I'll tell them everything about the old days. The gray areas. The times you. The difference, Red interrupted, is we're willing to face justice for our mistakes. Are you? Sirens wailed in the distance. Dugan looked at the wall of ghosts, at Red, at the laptop with his crimes spelled out in Excel, at the woman he'd been terrorizing standing tall now, protected by 500 men who remembered what honor meant. He ran. Made it 3 steps before Big Jim's massive hand caught his collar and lifted him like a child. Running's what cowards do, Big Jim said. Thought Red taught you better than that. The police cars arrived, lights painting the desert red and blue. But they didn't arrest the ghosts. They walked past them, straight to Dugan. Sheriff Harris looked sick as he pulled out handcuffs. Clint Dugan, you're under arrest for extortion, money laundering, assault. His voice continued, but the words were drowned by the sound of 500 engines starting at once. Not a threat, a celebration. The desert ghosts had come home, and they'd remembered who they were supposed to be. The police cars pulled away with Dugan handcuffed in the back, his face pressed against the window like a child leaving a party he'd ruined. His men had scattered like roaches when the lights came on, some arrested, others fleeing into the desert on foot. The ghosts remained, 500 strong, engines silent now, waiting. Red stood in the parking lot, the weight of 15 years pressing down on his shoulders. The Brotherhood had answered his call. They'd ridden through the night. They'd stood beside him against a monster he'd helped create. And he owed them the truth. Brothers, Red's voice carried across the lot. Before you celebrate, you need to hear something. The murmur of conversation died. 15 years ago, I failed you. Failed Tommy. Failed Sarah. I was your president, your leader, and I was so buried in my own righteousness I couldn't see the poison in our ranks. His hands clenched. Dugan planned that sabotage for months. And I missed it. Because I was too busy believing in the good to see the evil standing right beside me. Wrench stepped forward. Red. No. Let me finish, Red's voice cracked. 2 people died because I was blind. And instead of staying, instead of fighting to make it right, I ran. I let Dugan twist everything we built into something dark. I let him use our name, our patch, our brotherhood as a weapon against innocent people. I abandoned you when you needed me most. The silence was crushing. Then Big Jim laughed. Not mockingly, warmly. Brother, you think we don't know that? Red looked up, confused. We've known for 15 years, Doc said, stepping beside Jim. We knew you were hurting. Knew you blamed yourself. That's why we never stopped looking for you. But you left because grief broke you. Wrench interrupted. I get it. Tommy was my best friend. When he died, I wanted to burn the whole world down. But you loved Sarah like breathing. Losing her destroyed you. That doesn't excuse. No, it doesn't. Chains pushed through the crowd, his weathered face stern. But you're here now. You blew the whistle. You called us home not for revenge, but to protect an innocent child. That's the Red we rode with. That's the president we followed. Red felt his throat close. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Probably not, Eddie said with a shrug. But that's what brotherhood means. We don't ride because we're perfect. We ride because we're family, and family doesn't give up on each other. One by one, the ghosts began to rev their engines. Not loudly, just enough to rumble, to respond. It was the Brotherhood's way of saying, we hear you, we stand with you, you're home. Red covered his face with his hands and wept. Big Jim pulled him into a crushing hug. Welcome back, boss. We missed you. Inside the diner, Nora emerged from the kitchen, her mother's arms wrapped tight around her. She stared through the broken window at the sea of motorcycles, at the men embracing in the parking lot, at the old man crying in the center of it all. That's him, she whispered. That's Mr. Dalton. That's the man you gave your money to? Megan asked. Yeah. He looked so sad yesterday. Like he'd forgotten something important. I think he just remembered. Nora pulled away from her mother and walked outside. The ghosts parted for her automatically, this small fierce girl moving through giants. Red looked up as she approached, wiping his eyes quickly. Hi, Nora said. Hi yourself. Red knelt down to her level. You okay? Did they hurt you? No. You came. Her eyes were wide. All of you came. Why? Red glanced back at his brothers, at the wall of leather and loyalty. Because one brave girl reminded an old coward what honor sounds like. I'm not brave. I was scared. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are. He reached into his pocket and pulled out 9 crumpled dollar bills. I came to pay you back. For the groceries. Nora looked at the money, then at the 500 motorcycles. You brought 500 friends to pay back $9. Red laughed, the sound surprising even himself. I guess when you put it that way, I might have overreacted. I like it. It's very dramatic, Nora grinned. Then her face grew serious. The mean man. Will he come back? No, little one. He won't. I promise. Good. She threw her arms around his neck, hugging him with the fierce trust only children possess. Thank you for coming back. Red held her carefully, like she was made of spider silk and starlight. Thank you for reminding me how. 3 days later, the James family diner reopened. The broken window had been replaced, paid for by the ghosts. The door had been fixed, the walls painted, the jukebox repaired by Wrench himself, who'd refused payment. At 6 a.m., Megan flipped the open sign with shaking hands. By 6:15, every seat was filled with leather-clad bikers. They ordered coffee, eggs, pancakes, bacon. They left tips that made Megan's eyes water. They were polite, respectful, and when a family with 2 small children hesitated at the door, Big Jim stood and pulled out chairs for them. Best pie in Arizona, he said warmly. You're gonna love it here. The family sat. Then another. Then truckers who'd heard the story. Then townspeople who were curious. Then more who came because they'd heard the food was good and the ghosts made everyone feel safe. By noon, there was a waiting list. The local newspaper ran a story. Motorcycle Brotherhood saves local business, exposes corruption. Channel 7 did a feature, The Real Desert Ghosts, Protectors, Not Predators. Slowly, carefully, the town began to remember that not all men on motorcycles were monsters. Some were just broken people who'd found each other and decided to be better together than they could be alone. Red sat at the counter, drinking coffee that actually tasted like coffee for the first time in years. Nora sat beside him, spinning on her stool, chattering about school and her science project and how she'd told all her friends that she had 500 bodyguards now. You know what this means? Wrench said, walking up. You're president again. For real. Red looked at the patch on Wrench's vest. The Desert Ghost's insignia. Clean now. Honorable again. Only if we do it right this time, Red said. No gray areas. No compromises. We ride for those who can't ride for themselves. Just like Sarah always said. Just like Sarah always said, the ghosts echoed. Outside, the desert wind carried the smell of rain and second chances. The Brotherhood had come home. And this time, they were staying. 3 weeks later, Nora was taking a math quiz when the sound began. It started as a distant rumble, like thunder rolling across distant mountains. Then closer, louder. The classroom windows rattled. Mrs. Patterson looked up from her desk, confused. The rumble became a roar. Nora's pencil stopped mid-equation. She knew that sound. What on earth? Mrs. Patterson walked to the window and froze. Oh my! The parking lot was filling with motorcycles. Dozens of them, engines growling in formation. The desert ghosts, vests gleaming in the morning sun, lined up like an honor guard. Red stood at the front, helmet in hand, waiting. The principal's voice crackled over the intercom. Nora James, please come to the front office. Your, escort has arrived. The class erupted in whispers. Nora grabbed her backpack, her heart pounding with excitement and confusion. Outside, Red smiled as she approached. Hey, kiddo, got a minute? I'm supposed to be in school. Already cleared it with your mom and your principal. He gestured to the motorcycles. Today's the memorial run. We ride every year to honor the brothers and sisters we've lost. Tommy, Sarah, others. His voice softened. This year, we want you to ride with us. Me? But I'm just. You're the reason we're here. The reason we remembered who we were supposed to be. Red walked to a motorcycle with a gleaming sidecar attached. New, custom-built, painted with desert wildflowers. This is yours. If you want it. Nora's eyes went wide. Really? Really? Her mother appeared from the crowd, smiling through tears. Go ahead, baby. I'll meet you at the finish line. Red helped Nora into the sidecar, securing her helmet carefully. Comfortable. This is the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. Big Jim laughed from his bike. Kids got her priorities straight. The engines started in unison, a symphony of chrome and thunder and second chances. They pulled out of the school parking lot in formation, 2 by 2, a river of steel flowing through Flagstaff streets. People stopped on sidewalks to watch. Some waved. Others placed hands over hearts. The ghosts weren't feared anymore. They were respected, admired. Proof that people could change, that brotherhood could heal, that honor wasn't dead, just waiting to be remembered. They rode through town and onto the desert highway. The wind whipped Nora's hair, and her laughter rang out like bells. The landscape blurred past, red rocks, endless sky, the kind of freedom that could only be found on the open road. Red glanced down at her, and for a moment, he saw Sarah's smile and Nora's joy. The resemblance was uncanny, not in looks, but in spirit. That fierce, impossible belief that good people existed and were worth fighting for. They climbed into the canyon, where it had all begun, where the desert ghosts had been born 30 years ago, where Sarah and Tommy had died 15 years ago, where Red had blown the whistle 3 weeks ago and called his family home. A memorial stood at the canyon's peak, 2 stone markers with names and dates. Wildflowers had been placed at their base. The motorcycles formed a circle around the memorial. Engines cut. The silence was profound. Red dismounted and helped Nora out of the sidecar. The ghosts gathered close, removing their helmets. "We ride to remember," Red said, his voice carrying across the canyon. "To honor those who showed us what brotherhood meant." Sarah believed in second chances. Tommy believed in loyalty. "They died because I failed to protect them from the darkness in our own ranks." He pulled something from his vest, a patch, carefully folded. The desert ghost insignia with words stitched beneath. "Honor never dies." But a 10-year-old girl reminded me that good people always circle back. That kindness isn't weakness. That $5 and a brave heart can resurrect an army. He knelt before Nora. "This belonged to Sarah. She would have loved you, would have been proud of you." He pinned the patch to Nora's jacket. "You're an honorary ghost now. That means something. It means you stand for the broken, the forgotten, the people who need someone in their corner. Think you can handle that?" Nora touched the patch with reverent fingers. "I'll try. That's all any of us can do." Red stood, addressing the brotherhood. "We lost our way once. Let ourselves become what we fought against. But today, we remember. We recommit. We ride not for power or profit, but for the people who remind us why honor matters." 500 voices answered. Honor never dies. The engines roared to life again. They descended the canyon as the sun began to set, painting the desert in impossible colors. Nora held the patch tight, feeling the weight of something bigger than herself settling around her shoulders. At the diner, the celebration lasted hours. Food and laughter and stories of the old days mixed with hope for new ones. Megan watched her daughter surrounded by giants who'd become family, and felt gratitude so profound it ached. As the stars emerged, Red walked Nora to her mother's truck. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for seeing something in me worth saving." "You were always worth it," Nora replied. "You just forgot for a while." Red watched them drive away, the patch visible on Nora's jacket through the rear window. Wrench appeared beside him. "Think we can keep this going? Stay good. With her watching?" Red smiled. "We don't have a choice. That kid's scarier than any rival club." Sarah would have said the same thing. "Yeah." Red looked at the stars, at the desert that had witnessed his fall and resurrection. "Yeah, she would have." The circle was complete. A little girl's kindness had resurrected a brotherhood, redeemed a broken man, and reminded a forgotten town what loyalty looked like. The desert ghosts were home. And honor, after 15 years of silence, was thundering across the highway again, loud and alive and impossible to ignore. Some debts could never be repaid with money. Only with courage, community, and the simple, revolutionary act of believing people deserve second chances. Nora James had paid a $5 debt and received an army. Red Dalton had received forgiveness and remembered how to live. And somewhere in the wind, Sarah smiled. Good people always circle back. Always.